Welcome to the Show Me the Way podcast. I am your host, Andrea Miller, alongside a dear, dear friend, Tammy Thompson, and we are so excited to bring this podcast to you. Show Me the Way podcast is a podcast dedicated to exploring the journeys of those who have faced adversity and found themselves on unexpected paths. We will have meaningful, thoughtful conversations about challenges we have faced and how we discovered and forged new direction. Prepare to be inspired and to uncover your own strength as you listen to relatable and motivating stories. Life has a way of twisting and turning, and we often need a fresh perspective to understand how to navigate. Let's show each other the way. In this episode, I have an incredibly inspiring conversation with Jolene Towers, who I was introduced to through a networking connection. Jolene is a wife, mother of four, grandmother to one, and a passionate advocate for special needs children and their families. Jolene and her husband's world changed when their daughter was diagnosed with Cri-du-Chat syndrome shortly after birth. Doctors predicted severe developmental delays and a limited lifespan. But 29 years later, their daughter continues to thrive, teaching them invaluable lessons about life, strength, and connection. Through the challenges of young marriage, frequent relocations due to her husband's military career, raising three boys alongside her daughter, and dedicating herself to supporting others, Jolene has built a powerful community. She founded a support group that remains strong today, and she served on the board of a related society, ensuring that other families receive the guidance and encouragement they need. Jolene's story is a testament to perseverance, perspective, and the power of jumping in with both feet. Whether you're facing personal struggles or simply seeking inspiration, this episode offers wisdom and motivation to navigate whatever comes your way. Welcome back to the Show Me the Way podcast. I'm thrilled to have today's guest on the show. Recently, I've been able to share what I'm doing with a new networking group, and I met some great businessmen and men and women, including a wonderful woman who I found I have a bunch of things in common with, and she immediately started listening to the show. We met for coffee, we talked about it, and right after, she just listened to almost every episode. She listened and then started recommending friends for me to interview, which is awesome. So, Jolene Towers is our guest today, and she is one of this woman's friends. And she and I chatted. She shared many stories with me. Like I always say, we all have so many times in our life where we've had to pivot. But our mutual connection, this woman, Christine, she let me know that Jolene has dealt with a medical diagnosis for one of her children. So she definitely thought of her as a guest for the show, especially because of how the show started, where I shared about my son with muscular dystrophy. And as I say, guests can speak on whatever is on their heart. So I'm definitely looking forward to what Jolene will share with all of us today. So welcome, Jolene.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Of course. So glad that we have you. And as I have started saying over the last few weeks, a little disclaimer, one of my really good friends, Tammy, was starting this podcast with me and she was on most of the interviews, but she's going through a pivot right now too. She had retired from a job and now she started a new job. So her schedule isn't really as flexible as it once was. So I keep telling everybody that Tammy is here in spirit. So for today, it's just Jolene and me, and I'm really excited to chat. Jolene, before we jump in, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
I've been married for 33 years. My husband was active duty Air Force for 21 years. So we've lived in Utah, Mississippi, England, Washington, and then we've been in Ohio for the last almost 21 years. We have 4 kids and one darling grandchild who is 15 months. I love being a grandma. Over the years, we've also had 3 exchange students, 2 from Italy and 1 from France. And we've had multiple foster kids, and I've had a couple nieces live with us as well. So we have a busy house. My friends always joke, that they never know who's going to be living with us or for how long.
I love that. Family's so important, and I'm an extrovert, so the more the merrier, I always say.
Yeah. Things that I've done, like I love to coach. I love working with kids, and coaching is kind of one of my passion things. So I've coached soccer for 10 years, lacrosse for 9 years, and basketball for 4 years. I've served on a nonprofit board of directors for 22 years. And then 20 years ago, I co-founded a local support group for moms that have children with special needs. And we have over 2,600 members in our group now. So that has grown way bigger than I ever imagined that growing.
Wow, that is amazing. No wonder Christine thought you would be a great guest for the show because
Well, thank you to
so
both
many.
of you.
Of course. And I know Christine's hearing that because like I said, she's like my ultimate fan now. So just love that woman. Wow. So yeah, you've worn quite a few hats. I always say we all wear so many hats, but you might take the cake.
I don't know about that, but
Well, that is amazing. I just love that it just sounds like you always want to give of your talents, and you seem to recognize that life is short. So go after what you want to do and help people however you can.
I try.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Well, yeah. We talked on the phone for a bit, and there's so many different things. There's so many different directions Jolene could go in. But as we both have mentioned, there's a component that we can both relate to having children with a medical diagnosis. So I'm certain we're going to hear about that. But as I always tell everybody, the Show Me the Way podcast is just an opportunity, a platform for people. I keep saying it's been all women except one man, my husband kind of made him do it, but we're going to grow with more men. For now, it's just been women sharing their stories of times that they thought they were on one path and then they needed to pivot for all different reasons, maybe choices of their own or things that they just didn't expect were going to happen and they had to figure it out. So I know Jolene can definitely relate to that. And we let people speak on what's on their heart and we just have a casual conversation about it so that people can learn from their perspective. We don't put a script out there. We send some ideas, but we really just kind of let the interviewees go with it. So, with that said, Jolene, I would love to just allow you to take the mic and let us hear a little bit more.
Okay, so I thought about a couple different times, big pivotal moments where I feel like my life changed course from where it was at. I think about the teenage years, where I made some stupid mistakes, and you have that pivotal moment where you have the aha, like, maybe I don't want to be doing this, moments. Thought about that, but that was a long time ago. And I think about how that pivot did bring me to meet my husband. And I never ever thought I'd get married young. If someone asked me the day before I met my husband when I would want to get married, I would have said 23, 24, which is still young, but I ended up getting married at 18. It's obviously worked. We've been married for 33 years. So that was a pivotal thing. And then fast forward a number of years, we moved away with the military, away from family. So we were living in Mississippi at the time. And I was pregnant with our first daughter. My pregnancy went normal. Everything was fine. I actually even had lots and lots of ultrasounds just because my husband was doing his OB residency at the time. So my doctor used that as teaching time for my husband. So almost every appointment I got an ultrasound because he was teaching my husband things while he was doing it. Didn't see anything wrong. My daughter was born just a couple days before her due date, and she was 7 pounds 2 ounces, very normal birth weight. I know right when she came out, like she came out and cried. I hadn't even lifted her up to show her to me yet, and my doctor, my OB, said, "What was that?" Not very comforting words before you even see your baby, but you just hear your baby cry. So that kind of freaked me out for a second. And then they held her up and put her on me. And I knew her cry was a little weird, but I didn't know. I mean, that was my first child. I didn't know if all babies kind of sounded different when they came out after being squeezed through the birth canal. I didn't know if that affected that. So anyway, she was born. I got to hold her. I got to try to feed her, all of that right to begin with. Kind of had the normal experience there. About 3 hours later, the neonatologist came in and talked to us and told us that there might be something going on with her. And kind of pointed out some facial features. She had some widespread eyes, flat bridge nose, a small jaw. She had some skin tags, and the tragus on her ear was duplicated. So that was like really big and thick. So just kind of some anomalies there. And so they started doing all these tests the next day. I mean, I think every specialist in the hospital came and saw her. So that was really stressful. Because my husband was a resident, he was working. So he wasn't with me during all that. And I finally called him in tears after a not so kind experience with one of the doctors. I called my husband in tears. He ended up getting to leave work and be with me for at least a few hours that day. So we got Taylor's diagnosis. We went home. She was in the NICU for a couple days, and then we took her home. So we were at home when we got her diagnosis. And one of our good friends, we had asked him before I delivered if he would be our kid's pediatrician. And he said yes. I don't think he ever dreamed he was going to have to come give us devastating news about our child. So he actually came over to our house because we were friends with him. So he came over to our house when the chromosome results came back. And he told us that our daughter had what's called Cri-du-Chat syndrome. And Cri-du-Chat means cat cry in French. And she sounded like a cat. And so that's what my doctor was talking about when she came out. He said, what was that? Because her cry was so different. Yeah, best way to describe it is it sounds like a cat in heat when they cry. And like everywhere that I would go with her when she was little, people would always come to me, oh, she sounds just like a little kitten. Oh, she sounds just like a cat, and she did. She did. So that's her syndrome. The information we got the night we found out that she had it, we were told that she would never walk, she would never talk, she would never live to be a teenager, and that she would not need sleep. So here I am, still recovering from delivery. I'm exhausted from being up with a newborn. And they're telling me that my kid's never going to need sleep. I was like, what? I mean, it sounds weird, but that like affected me more than the not walking, the not talking. It was the not living to be a teenager and the not needing sleep. I mean, those like that completely just threw me for a loop.
No, that's not weird at all. And I think, and I want you to keep going. I didn't mean to
Mm-hmm.
interrupt you, but it just
Oh,
made me
you're good.
think like when very different, of course, but when my husband and I received my son's diagnosis, now granted he was 5 years old, but immediately that's what you do. You're like, oh my gosh, when they're 16, when they're 17, when they're 20, what's it going to be like? And it's so hard to bring yourself back to the present.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So just we love the Friends show. So my husband and I cried for a little bit, we talked the whole bit. And then I was like, you know what? I can't sit here and cry all night. I just can't. I can't do that. And I'm like, you know what? Friends is starting. Let's be done with this. Watch Friends. So then we just snuggled our cute little brand new baby that we had. She was darling. And watched Friends and laughed. And from that we moved on. I feel like you know what I mean? It was hard. I'm not saying it wasn't hard. You have all these hopes and dreams for your child. When you give birth, you have the hopes and dreams that everyone has. They're going to go to college, they're going to get married, they're going to have children, they're going to, all of just life things. And that you're going to have grandchildren because they have kids, all of that. And all those hopes and dreams went out the window that day. And so that's hard because you have to change and find a new normal or a new way to do things, or new hopes and dreams for your kids. You could still have hopes and dreams for your child. It just changes because it's not the same hopes and dreams that you had before. So I'm one that I tend to just jump in. So we got therapy started right away. She started occupational therapy and speech therapy at 2 months. And people often will be like, what can I do with a 2-month-old for speech? But really with Taylor, they worked a lot on feeding therapy because she didn't, it still amazes me. I mean, I had 3 other children after her that did the normal developmental milestones. But it still amazes me. Like I watch kids like my granddaughter, and she just chewed. Like it was just natural for her to know how to chew food. Like my daughter, that wasn't natural for her. We had to teach her how to chew food, how to use her tongue to get it over to the side of her mouth to chew, So we started therapy really early. I loved her therapists in Mississippi. They were awesome. Many of them I still keep in touch with. Today they became friends. So we did lots of therapy. We did OTPT and speech really from the time she was born. And then we continued to do it until she was 22 when she aged out of high school. But we also got private physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy as well. So lots of therapy. I think just finding new normals, and enjoying the wins and the things that she is doing. And, Taylor, for the most part, has been happy. And she keeps us laughing and she's funny. She's got a sense of humor. Her speech was very slow to progress. And so we did sign language. I went and took some sign language classes at the university and learned sign. So we did a lot of sign language with her when she was younger. The sign has kind of disappeared now because she's talking enough that we rarely use sign. Every once in a while when she's not listening to me, she's being stubborn, I'll kind of speak and sign at the same time, kind of make her focus and listen to me. But she can, I think she's changed not only our lives, but I think she's made my boys, because I have 3 younger sons younger than her, and I think she's made them be very compassionate, very aware of people's needs. And that's been fun to watch. And I think that is a blessing because of having her in our family. I've seen multiple of my nieces go into special education, and that's because of their interaction with their cousin. And I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and so all of my brothers and sisters had kids before me. And so I have a lot of nieces and nephews that really are not that much younger than me. They're a lot older than my kids, kind of right between my kids and me, age-wise. And so they would come and help a lot. They would come to the national conference for my daughter's syndrome. We went every year since I was on the board of directors, and they would come help at that. And they loved that. They all kind of fought over who got to go, and they would help with that. So they would also come and watch her when we do trips. So my husband and I get away. So that was great. But I've seen her affect their lives for the better as well. So that's been fun to watch.
Wow. And how old is she now?
So she is 29.
Wow. And they had originally told you maybe not even through the teens?
Not even make it to a teenager.
That is amazing.
So, and she walks and talks, which they said she wouldn't do either. And she started walking. Well, she started taking steps right before her second birthday. But then she didn't start walking all over until she was 2 years, 4 months.
What about the sleeping? Did she ever get rest, or did you ever get rest?
Off and on. So we tend to go through spells. We're in a bad spell right now, actually. But we tend to go through spells where she sleeps good, and it will be, sometimes just a couple months. Sometimes it'll be a year that she's sleeping good, and we're like, oh, hallelujah, maybe we're through this. And then it will be like, psych, and then we'll have a few months or a year of her getting up multiple times a night. And thankfully now, we don't always have to get up with her. We used to always, when she was younger, we'd have to get back up with her, mostly because, one, we didn't think she'd go to bed, but she would do things that she could hurt herself or that type of thing. So we'd have to get up with her to make sure she was safe. Now we don't really have to get up with her that often, but she comes in and wakes us up anywhere from once a night to 10 times a night. So we get a visit from her.
Okay, you just never know what it's going to be like.
We never know. The other day I did get up because I heard her getting into the chocolate milk, and I'm like, oh, she can pour the chocolate milk, but not very well. And then she's going to take that chocolate milk up to her bedroom, and we're going to have a chocolate milk trail up my carpet. And so I heard that going on, so I went down and stopped her from doing that and let her just bring water to her bedroom.
So you had mentioned aging out of school. So how was the school situation for her?
So I feel like school was great. We started off a little rocky. We were living in Washington at the time. Early intervention was great, and the developmental preschool was great. We were in Washington for kindergarten, and I really wanted her mainstreamed with the typical kids, at least for part of the day, to have that interaction and to follow their example on behavior and things like that. Washington had never done it before, at least not the district I was in. They had never mainstreamed a special needs kid. They were always in self-contained classes. And so they were very resistant to it. Her kindergarten teacher did not want her to be there. She made it very evident she didn't want her to be there. And she was being forced to have Taylor be in her classroom. And she wasn't in there by herself. She had an aide in there helping her. So it wasn't like the kindergarten teacher had all of her other students and Taylor. The aide was responsible for helping Taylor. She was just in there. So that was hard. She did have a wonderful first grade teacher that was very welcoming in Washington. So we kind of ended on a good note in Washington. Ohio has been fantastic. They really have. We got here and they were like giving us things, like, hey, we have adaptive PE. Oh, I didn't even know that existed, So Ohio was good. And she was mainstreamed a lot in elementary school, really for everything but math and reading. And that was great for her. It was great for her behavior. She modeled, the other kids' behavior. Yes, there were some bad things that she modeled too. But overall, it was a very positive experience. When we got to middle school, that got harder just because the gap between her and the middle school kids was getting so big. So we did try mainstreaming her for science and social studies. And that didn't work very well. And we ended up pulling her from those. So then she was just, I think in middle school, the only thing she was really mainstreamed for was choir and PE. And then high school, the only thing she was mainstreamed for was American Sign Language. So she took sign language with the typical kids that were taking it for language credit. And that worked great. The sign language teacher was fantastic. So good with Taylor. And a funny thing, because like I said, when she was little, we did a lot of sign with her. So she knew a lot of sign, even though she wasn't really using it much at that time. But they had to have her leave the classroom for tests because she'd give the other kids the answers for the tests. Because like I said, she can't write, so that she'd have to tell the aide the answer, and then the aide would have to write it down. But then the other kids were listening for her answer.
Oh,
because they knew that she knew the sign language, and so they had to have her take her test not in the sign language room.
oh, that is so funny. So getting back, you say this is a rare disease. Do you know the numbers on that? Like how many
It is. It's
children?
one, and they used to say 1 in 50,000. Now they say it's probably more like 1 in 30,000 to 50,000 births. So it's very rare. So there's no support groups like like Down syndrome will have like a support group, like in any major city there's a Down syndrome support group. So there's multiple per state. Where for Cri-du-Chat syndrome, there's not enough kids. We don't even have one for all of Ohio. Like it's for the whole nation. It's actually for all of North America. So Mexico, United States, and Canada is the support group.
So your original doctor, the one that delivered the
Hmm.
baby, had he heard of it before, seen it before?
No, no. And none of the doctors, they had all heard of Cri-du-Chat because it's kind of one of those that they hear about in medical school
Mhm.
because of the cat cry, because it's, has that distinct characteristic. So I think all of them had heard of it, but none of them had seen a patient with it. And my neonatologist, I mean, kind of funny, I ended up working for her. I ended up being her nanny, and Taylor came with me to be a nanny for her. I just took her with me to work. So, I mean, I talked to her after the fact, and I said, "Did you think it was Cri-du-Chat to begin with?" And she goes, "Well, we did, but then none of us had ever seen a kid, so we were looking up stuff." And she said that, when they looked stuff up, it said 100% low birth weight, where Taylor was 7 pounds 2 ounces. It said 100% microcephaly, the small head, and Taylor's head size was on the low, like on the small side, but it was still in the normal range. And so that was kind of throwing them like, okay, we think it's this. She kind of meets some of the other, but she was a very healthy, normal weight. I would say that's not normal for Cri-du-Chat syndrome.
Right, but they
Most of the
really should
kids are
change that
little.
study. They need to get rid
Well,
of 100% because it's not
they
accurate.
do, and with me being working so close with the society for 22 years, we've tried to get better information out, updated information. I think the internet, of course, has helped with that. The internet was around when I had my daughter, but like you didn't really have it in your home,
Right.
and it was dial up. I mean, this is at the very, very beginning, so there wasn't a ton of information. Like it was just starting to take off.
Right, and being so rare, it would be so difficult to have it all accurate at that point, but
Yeah.
as people continue to learn, like you're saying.
Well, and I think the information at that time too had been done on people that were institutionalized, and so they weren't getting the love and care that the kids and the adults get now.
Good point.
And so I think that kind of skews the information as well.
For
So
sure. So, is this a genetic disorder?
so it's a chromosome. Um, hers is a deletion. She's missing part of the fifth chromosome, is what it is. And it can come from one of the parents. A quick kind of little genetics lesson, I guess. So 80% of the kids with Taylor syndrome are just random deletions. That it did
Okay.
not come from one of the parents, that you don't have any higher chance of having another kid with it. Um, you're not a carrier, not anything like that. So 80% are just random. And my husband and I did get tested right after we had her, and it didn't come from one of us. What can happen if the parents don't know, and they have a child and it comes from one of them? One of them could have what's called a balanced translocation. So the fifth chromosome, which that's the number of chromosome that's involved with my daughter's, that little piece can be translocated to another number, and it can be any number of chromosomes. So we'll just use 11 as an example, but it could be any of them. That fifth chromosome can be translocated to 11. And so the parent is normal, they have normal intelligence. They don't know anything's wrong. Because they have all the pieces, that fifth chromosome's just moved to a different location. So then when they pass genetics onto their child, that number 5 can get lost. But in addition to that, whatever number it's attached to, like if it was attached to number 11, you could end up with a deletion or a trisomy of number 11 as well. So usually all the kids who it does come from one of their parents, they also have another chromosome involved, another chromosome abnormality besides the number 5.
Okay. I'm very interested in that, of course, because of my son's situation.
Uh-huh.
It can randomly happen for Duchenne
Uh-huh.
boys as well, but I am a carrier, and if it does come from a parent, it's the mother because it's on the X chromosome. And
It's
yeah, I'm
so
just very
interesting, all that.
interested. Yeah, it really is, and I didn't know I was a carrier. We don't have any of it in our family. Like I said, it pretty much just affects boys.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no idea, and I still don't know if it just spontaneously happened with me because my mom never went through the genetic test. It really wasn't a purpose for her to do that. So I don't know if it just randomly happened with me for some
Right.
reason, and I wouldn't have gone through a test, but it ended up that anytime I was pregnant with a boy, it would have been a 50% chance. So my first son got the good X, and my second son received the other one. So yeah, 50% with a boy. So if I were to get pregnant again, back then. I'm getting up there now, so hopefully nothing like that happens now. But back then, I could have had another boy. A lot of times you don't find out until they're 5. So I know people that have multiple children with Duchenne because they have boys and they're carriers and they had them when they were, little, so like 2 years apart or something like that. So fortunately, we we didn't have another child before he was
Does
diagnosed.
it
But
always just affect boys, or is it sometimes girls?
it's mainly boys. It's a very, very small percentage
A
of
girl.
girls that
Because I
can.
have a friend that has two kids. One's a boy and a girl, and I was thinking that was the kind of muscular dystrophy that they had, but I might be wrong.
How old is the boy?
They're both middle school age, high
Oh,
school
okay.
age. I think the
Okay.
boys in middle school and the girls in high school.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. There are two types. There's Duchenne and there's also Becker's. Becker's is a little less severe. So a lot of times it's a very similar diagnosis, but they're walking later in life
Yeah,
and
they're
they,
both mostly in wheelchairs
okay.
now.
Yeah, it can affect. I mean, there's all kinds of different muscular dystrophies, and it can, if you're a girl and you get that chromosome from your mom, sometimes you can have some of the same. Hmm. Yeah.
Well, and then my cousins, a lot of my cousins have myotonic muscular dystrophy.
Okay.
So my
So
aunt
many
had it.
versions.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm very interested in that. And I think too, our listeners, they want to know, how does this happen? And we've talked
Mhm.
about it a couple of times on the show. It's almost amazing that there's healthy children because there's so many things that can go wrong.
That's what my husband says, and he delivers babies all the time. But he's like just with everything that has to go
Perfectly.
perfectly right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yep.
amazing.
And it's also so interesting that you had so many ultrasounds and there was no indication.
There wasn't anything for him to see. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I
Right.
think the people who get the diagnosis before the baby's born, and which is a large percentage of people with Cri-du-Chat syndrome, it's the baby's not growing,
Right. And yeah. And like you were saying,
and
the
so
small birth weight.
the baby's really small. Where my daughter was normal birth weight. And I don't know if it's because I'm tall. I'm 5'11". So I don't know if she just got my tall genes in there, that
Mm-hmm. Right.
because she stayed on the normal growth charts all the way through, and Cri-du-Chat has their own growth chart because otherwise the doctors are just telling them that the baby's failure to thrive, which no parent likes to hear that. So Cri-du-Chat does have their own separate growth charts, but Taylor stayed on the normal growth charts all the way through. I figure it's probably just because my family's so tall. I mean, I have an
Mm-hmm.
uncle. My mom's brother is 6'11". I
Okay.
mean, I've got
Yeah.
some tall genes in my family.
Yes. Yeah. So that could
So,
be. Hmm. Well, I have a couple things that I still want to ask you about.
mhm.
I feel like we could talk all day about this because it's so interesting to me, and I just love the way that you talk about it. And I love when my guests share things like this and talk about how they were advocates, and it's beautiful the things that you do when you find out something like this. But the first thing I want to get back to is you talking about your sons. So I just really think that it makes such a difference when children, kids, siblings are around something different like that, something that they're not used to seeing or something that a lot of children aren't affected by. And I see it all the time with my older son. Like the way that he thinks about things and how he's empathetic and how he deals with his brother and just his whole mindset is incredibly different than that of his peers and his friends. And nothing wrong with somebody that doesn't have that experience, but it's just amazing to see the way that he thinks through things. So I would love to hear more about your thoughts on that.
It's wonderful. I think all my boys are just so compassionate and loving, and they're very tolerant of people and their differences, which I love. I love that about them. All of them are. They're all so sweet with Taylor. I mean, they all have their own personalities, and some of them are more patient than others. Or patient at different times, I should say, than some of the other boys. But they're all great. My son Max is just 2 years younger than Taylor, and for some reason, the high school they kept getting bomb threats when Taylor and Max were in high school, and Max would not leave without Taylor. Like it kept happening. It was like kind of annoyingly, that it was happening so often. And so then Max could drive and he had a car. And so him and his girlfriend at the time is now his wife. They've been together since they were 15. But they were talking about like, do we just take off? Do we just, if it happens, do we leave before they lock us down? Like, what do we do? But Max is like, I won't leave without Taylor. Like he was very protective. And that just completely warmed my heart. I loved that. And he would always go find her. He was like, I have to be with her because I've got to protect her. And not that she didn't, she had wonderful teachers at high school, took very good care of her, but he felt that I'm here and I need to be with her. I need to be here to protect her if something really does happen. And thankfully nothing ever happened anyway.
I love that so much.
you
Yeah.
know.
I mean, it's different boy and girl. I have two boys. So
Uh-huh.
they they still fight with each other and
Oh, my
still
kids
get on
fight.
each other. Yeah, but yeah, of course. But it's just so interesting. Not that I want people to have to deal with crazy adversity or with medical diagnoses like these, but I grew up with little adversity. So I really had zero experience with something like that. And it's very interesting to see children that grow up with adversity, how it impacts how they think about life. And I would agree. My older son is the same way. A lot of empathy, a lot of compassion. He couldn't just go beat up on his brother and wrestle him to the ground. So he would lightly do it or do it in a different way so that my younger son still felt like, yeah, we're boys and we're having
Yeah.
this little rug and tug or whatever. But my older son would be so gentle with him and just understood that it's not the same as other boys.
Well, the boys would tease her. She loves to be teased. I mean, sometimes she gets mad. Quit teasing me, But they love to tease her. And my son Jack has been up at school in Michigan. That's where I know Christine from, is because our boys played soccer together at Detroit Mercy. And so he's been up there, and he'll come home and he calls her baby. And in some ways she hates it, but in some ways it's kind of become their thing. And she's like, Jack calls me a baby. And I'm like, well, only when you act like one. And then she just laughs. And, she knows the second he comes home, he's going to call her a baby, but she looks forward to it. Even though it kind of bugs her, she looks forward to Jack coming home and saying, hey, baby,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and they tease, and that's fun. And I have my youngest home from school right now. He's out at Utah State, but he's home for spring break. And he got home yesterday. And I mean, Taylor was so excited. And I think that's my boys like that too, that they have a sibling that's so over the top excited, when they come home. And she loves her brothers.
That's
She's
very
very close
special.
to her brothers. And, they've had to deal with a lot. We can talk about the flip side and the not so fun things that they have to deal with, But I think the hard is what makes them so compassionate and understanding. And, they all got to the point where they didn't want babysitters. They're like, Mom, we can do it. We can do it. If you guys go out, you don't need a babysitter. But they had to deal with a lot because my daughter still has bathroom accidents. And so then it's boys changing their older sister who's had an accident and who is, a typical teenage body. So they had to deal with those things. And she still very much throws fits like a 2-year-old, but she's 200 pounds now. So she's not little, so the heart, but I think that's what makes them so compassionate and so
Right.
loving.
Exactly. So is Max the one that gave you a grandchild then?
Yes. Yes.
And did they live near
They live
you or?
15 minutes from me. So
Oh,
I get my
perfect.
cute grandbaby every Tuesday. So,
And I have to imagine that and being that his wife has been around Taylor for so long too, I have to
mhm.
imagine it also has helped them be pretty compassionate and caring parents as
Oh,
well.
yeah, they're fantastic parents.
What
Really,
is
really
your
good.
grandchild's name?
Her name's Chloe.
Oh, I love that.
She is just darling. She's feisty and sassy and
That's really
so
fun.
sweet, but it's funny to see that sassiness coming out in her. It's kind of funny.
That's wonderful. Well, good. Okay, I want to also talk about this group that you've created. Can you talk a
Okay.
little bit more about
Yeah.
that?
So I live outside of Dayton, Ohio. We're about 15 minutes from there. And so I started a group. It's called Dayton Area Special Moms. And we started it, a friend of mine, Jean, we kind of started it together. And she was the one that actually kept like the email list and stuff. We'd send emails out because we started out on email. And it really just started. We met in the waiting room of our kids' therapy, of a place called Therapy Connections. And we met in the waiting room, and there was 3 of us, myself and Jean and another mom, Nikki. And we felt like we needed a mom's night out. Like we needed to get away. We wanted to find out resources and things like that too. We were all new to the area. We all happened to be military. So none of us were from Ohio. We were all here with the military. So we started a group, and then more and more people kept joining us, kept joining us, kept joining us. Nikki and Jean do not live here anymore. The other 2 moms, they don't live here. They both moved away. Jean's in Montana and Nikki's in Kentucky. But yeah, so it just started from that, and it grew. And then when Facebook came around, we jumped on Facebook and put everything there. We don't really do anything other than Facebook now. I mean, we do mom's night outs. We do a mom's night out every month, and we also do either a lunch or a breakfast. We don't do both. We do either or once a month as well. And it's just a time for the moms to come out. They can talk about if they're going through something, they need help with an IEP, they need help with ideas for behavior or where they can get a certain device they're looking for and how to get insurance to pay for it. I mean, anything like that. People will post on the Facebook group and just ask questions, and The group is a wealth of knowledge, and people are really willing to help each other. We had someone the other day that was looking for a walker, on the group for their kid, and immediately they had people reach out, hey, I have one you can use. Just lots of things like that. And some people just want to do Facebook and they don't really come to anything. Others really like to come to things and have that in-person support. We've tried to get speakers occasionally too. So we'll sometimes have speakers come and talk about different subjects. So we kind of do a variety of things like that.
That is wonderful. And it's all moms only.
It's all moms. I get people mad at me sometimes when dads want to join. And I say, sorry, this group's just for moms. They're like, but I need the support. And I'm like, I understand that, but this one's just for moms.
Yep. And I don't know, I think women are really good at creating community. Not that men aren't, but women just seem to really excel doing that.
Well, and I think you add men, and especially doing like dinners and stuff,
Mhm.
then is there going to be the flirtatious part, there that you don't want to have?
Yeah, it may change the
I
dynamic.
just think it changes the dynamic,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we don't want that.
Right. I get it. So, speaking of men, you and your husband, I always like to kind of touch on this too. 33 years, that's amazing. That is wonderful.
I know
And
sometimes I'm like, I am not old enough to have been
yeah, I
married 33
know.
years.
And I know, and you're not old enough to be a grandma either. Um, but it happens. Somehow it happens. I guess medical diagnoses like these, especially since it was your very first child and you were so young, it can go one of two ways. You can either grow together and learn together, or you can say, this is not working. It's too difficult. We have very different ideas on how to move forward. And there's no judgment here, but you see different things based
Oh yeah, for
on
sure.
medical diagnoses that families deal with. And very, very fortunate for me, I thank God every day that my husband and I grew together. Now we still have our moments. And there are things with my son that he does very differently than I would. We have very different thoughts on things. But overall, it has definitely helped us grow together and learn together. We even started a small nonprofit, but again, together. And I'm appreciative for that. So would you say that you and your husband kind of remain strong partners with everything?
We do. We do. And I think we definitely grew together as well. When she was born, my husband was working 100 to 120 hours a week. So I just kind of did things at home, but he was very much there for me. And even if he wasn't there in person, I'd page him and then he'd call me back when he got a second. And, I was frustrated with something or I needed like, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
So we really worked together and we grew together, and we just made it work. Not to say there wasn't hard times or things that we disagreed on or things like that. There certainly were, but we really just did it together as a couple.
I love that, made it work, because that's the phrase right there. It's
It
definitely
is.
work.
And
Mm-hmm.
he's definitely supportive. He's not as social as me. I have a very high social need, and he knows that.
Same.
And my husband does not. Um, so he is very supportive of me going out for girls' night outs and things like that. He knows that I need that time away, and especially when the kids were little and I was a stay-at-home mom and I was with them all the time. He knew that in the evenings when he was home, not every evening, but that I needed the nights out here and there to just get away and kind of recharge my battery.
Right.
And he was always very good about supporting that, and he still is. He still's like, go.
That's wonderful. So what is a typical day like for you now with Taylor?
So she needs help getting ready in the mornings. She still needs help with bathing and dressing and those types of things. Thankfully, we do have a care provider now. She started for us. It'll be 2 years in May that we got our care provider. And up until that point, I never had any help with her. So for the first 27 years, I didn't have any help. But now the care provider comes and gets her bathed and dressed, which is very helpful for me.
Yes, that's great.
And so she does that. We still do it on the weekends on Saturday and Sunday, but it's nice that Monday through Friday we have someone. So she comes and gets her ready. Her name's Andrea, and she's fabulous. We love her. She keeps saying she's going to move to Florida, and I keep telling her she can't. I'm like, no, you can't. You can't move. You can't move. But so she comes and gets her bathed and ready in the morning. Sometimes we have fits because my daughter's really lazy. She would prefer to just stay home with me, and she needs to go to her day program. I need her to go to her day program, but she also needs that interaction and needs to get out and do things.
And what is the day program?
So we've done 2. She was at a farm for how many years? 7 years. She went to a farm, and that was fantastic. It was a great program. They got the kids out to help feed the animals, take care of the animals. They had to do it even during the winter. They just had to dress warm, and they did have heated barns for them to be in to, do crafts and things like that, get out of the cold. And recently we changed. I just think she was ready for a change. And so she goes to a program called Empowered, and it's great. They do activities every day. They go somewhere every day. They'll go to a movie one day, they'll go bowling one day, they'll go to the Air Force Museum one day, they go to a coffee house and just get, drinks and pastries, a day. So they just let us know how much money to send every day, and they take them out in the community. They have a big kitchen in their facility, so they'll do cooking with the kids. They do crafts with the kids. They do karaoke. And so she just gets to be with friends.
I love that. That's wonderful.
And so she loves that. There's one boy in particular that has Down syndrome that Ben just cracks her up, and they are so cute. And so she's always excited to get on the band because he lives in our neighborhood, so they ride the same band together. And yeah, it's good. And the program's good. And we're happy. So, and then she gets home at 2. Let's see, she gets home about 2:30. And so someone has to be here for. Some days my care provider's here for her in the afternoon. Sometimes I make sure I'm home for her in the afternoon. And she really just plays. She's pretty content at home to just play. She loves her dolls. She loves her stuffed animals. She loves watching Disney and Nickelodeon and things on her iPad. And so she's pretty good at self-entertaining. She does get into stuff and make messes. She tornadoes her room multiple times a day. She thinks she has to take out every stuffed animal in bed. So her room's always a tornado. And then at night, she just needs help getting jammies on. And she's pretty good about going to bed. It's just getting her to stay in bed.
To stay in bed. Okay. Wow. So then you had mentioned you were part of a board. Are you still involved with that?
I'm not. I was part of the board of directors for the National Society. It's called 5P minus society, because the 5th chromosome, and then P because it's the short arm, and then minus because it's deleted. So the society is called 5P minus. And I was on the board of directors since 2002, and I stepped down off the board this past summer.
Okay.
So I was on for 22 years. I'm still heavily involved. The conference this summer is in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we have a lot of family there. And so I'm in charge of the conference this summer. So I'm not feeling like I'm really off the board yet. Doing that.
Feels like that's typical.
And I'll still help. And my husband, he is actually the professional advisory board chair for the society too. So we'll still very much be involved. It was time to get some younger people in and fresher ideas, and I just felt like it was time.
Okay. Wow, you have certainly made quite an impact, and I feel again like I could just keep talking to you. Very, very interesting. My next question is, what is your favorite Friends episode? I mean, that's very important because that's my favorite show too.
I love Friends. I love Friends. If I need to pick me up, I can just go scroll through Friends clips. Okay, I just need to forget about this stressful thing that's happening for a minute, and I need to just laugh.
Yes.
So I'm very much one that deals with things by laughter.
Wonderful,
Laughter's
wonderful.
the best medicine, right?
I agree.
I don't know what my favorite Friends episode is. There's too many. I think probably funny ones with Rachel and Ross, and just they're funny. I don't know. I think after they said they were on a break.
Oh, right.
And just their comebacks to each other after they got married in Vegas, and Rachel's like, "Oh, my love of my life,"
Yes. Yeah, I do really appreciate that whole, you just got to laugh, and sometimes you need it for sure. And hopefully it remains the case, but you can usually find it anytime during the day.
You can.
So that's wonderful. Well, this has been so fun to talk to you and learn.
It's great to talk to you too.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's an emotional topic, but just the way your perspective and the way that you express everything and explain everything, I love it. I could see why you were on the board of that society, and I could see why people wanted to join your group, because you have such a great attitude, and the way that you explain things really makes it seem like, things come our way, we can handle difficult things and we can still live our life. So I love that. I will give you one more opportunity, though. You've given us all kinds of thoughts, but anything you would like our listeners to hear about perspective, or if you could go back and tell your younger self something, what would you say?
I think just perspective. Something else that came to mind was, like, I look at my friends really a lot of my closest friends now, they all have kids that are special needs too. And I have some wonderful people in my life. And if we didn't have Taylor, they wouldn't be in my life. I wouldn't know them. There wasn't a way for us to connect or get to know each other other than the special needs community. And Jeff and I often talk about that, about these awesome people in our lives because we have Taylor. And so we just look at that as a very big blessing. One of the many blessings that come from having a kid with special needs is the community that you get to be a part of and the closeness. And we're very, very grateful for that. And I don't know if there's anything like that I would tell my young self at 21 when I had her. I don't know. I feel like I jumped in with both feet, and I remember some rumors. You gotta love the rumor stuff. But I remember some rumors at that time from some of the other doctors' wives that got back to me that said I wasn't handling it well. And I thought about that kind of many times over the years. I thought, what made them perceive that I wasn't handling it well? Because I wasn't curling up in a ball and crying, because I didn't go into this deep, dark depression, and yes, we were devastated. Like I said, all those hopes and dreams that we had for our child disappeared in that instant, and we had to find new hopes and dreams. But I didn't let it break me, I guess. I guess I just jumped in with both feet and was like, okay, we're going to start therapy. Okay, we're going to get involved with the society. Okay, we're going to, and we did those things. So I've often wondered what made them say that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could be a variety of things, but something I've really learned, especially as I've gotten older, like you don't really know what's going on in people's lives. You don't know the background that they have. You can't control what they're thinking or what they say. I keep talking about the let them theory from Mel Robbins. I just did a
Yes.
live about that yesterday. And it's like, let them judge, there's no way you can understand what someone's going through or what their life is like. Even other moms that have children with the exact same diagnosis.
Because they're all so different.
It's so different. Yeah. So it's so difficult to judge. So I think taking your words and giving something to our listeners would be just try not to judge other people. You really don't know until you've been in their shoes. And even if you've been in similar shoes, you just sometimes have to listen and accept the way that they're handling things because it's whatever is working for them and it has nothing to do with you.
Right. And I guess that's what I'd tell my young self is don't let what other people say affect you.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I totally did. But
No, it doesn't sound like it.
It did bother me, but I always just kind of thought, what was I doing that made them think I wasn't handling it? I was like, huh.
It's very easy to say, this is what I would have done. And I think I did that a lot more back in the day when I was younger and even before kids, like, oh, I would never let my kid do that. And I would never let my kid do that. And then you're
It's the young and immaturity speak,
yeah.
right?
And then you're like, oh, I don't care that he's been on video games for 6 hours, whatever.
I tell my son that I've done all my nevers. Like my son that's married, he's like, Mom, I said I'd never. He's always driven American cars, and he just got a car that's not American made. And he's like, I said I'd never do this. And I said, just chalk it off as one of your nevers. I said, I've done all my nevers.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I have so many. You should see my notepad here. I have so many notes. That is so great. And people do that all the time. I would never do this, and I would never do that. And yeah, I have a Honda minivan because it was made into a wheelchair van. But I said I would never have a van, and now I couldn't live without it.
And I said I'd never have a minivan, and I had two. But it was so easy with Taylor, and then I had the three boys that were younger than her. Like it was the easiest best car ever. But yeah, definitely one of my nevers.
Love that. That's so good. Yeah, there's so many things that you can say that about, but you just don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. You have no idea. I've just learned that so much. And I really like what you said about the perspective you have on life and the blessing that Taylor has been to you and how you wouldn't be where you are today without her and you wouldn't have the connections in the community without her. I think that is so wonderful. I think that God made you her mother for sure.
Well, thank you.
And I am really grateful that you shared your story. I think a lot of people can learn. Maybe they won't go through a child diagnosis like that, but your perspective is so important for everything we go through in life. So
thank you so much for having me on today.
Of course. Thank you.
Great to talk to you.
Yeah, it was. And I can't wait to drop this episode. I think it's going to be great for our listeners. And good luck with everything with Taylor. And I hope she continues to thrive.
Well, thank you, and good luck to you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Show Me the Way podcast. We truly appreciate you tuning in to today's episode about overcoming adversity and finding your path. We hope it brought you new insights, empowered you with perspective, and inspired you to find joy in your journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who could use a little motivation. Until next time, keep seeking the light and showing the way.